kind of identify why are you doing this in the first place, and then how do you get out to your audience? What is your audience looking for from you? How do they position you as the expert in their eyes? And how do we get a hold of them as quickly, as effortlessly as possible?
Michelle, I'm super excited to have you join me for this episode of Coffee with Closers.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Most certainly. You are a serial entrepreneur. You have multiple businesses that you run. You help other entrepreneurs build and grow their businesses. And you do a whole lot of other stuff that we want to get to in a second. But to the audience that may not know who you are, would you give a little bit of a synopsis of your entrepreneurial journey?
A little synopsis of my journey. Okay, let's start with who I am. So I'm Michelle Nedelec. I run a company called Awareness Strategies, and we've been running that for the last 23 years. It has undergone some fun pivots, but I actually started my first business when I was 23 with not one, but 3 businesses, all north of the Arctic Circle. I do not recommend that. Mm-hmm. That's as brief as I can get on that one. Feel free to go anywhere you want with those.
And is this the primary business that you run today, is the Awareness Strategies?
Yeah. So today, Awareness Strategies kind of morphed. In 2003, we started out as a personal development company and helping businesses to understand how their business becomes a reflection of them. Because oftentimes entrepreneurs will get stuck in their business, things won't go right, their teams aren't doing what they want them to do. And it really all comes back to the founder of the company and what's going on internally, believe it or not. And we can unfold that one as much as you want. But in about 2015, we started realizing that this internet thing was here to stay. So we're looking at how do we market online? How do we get online? What's the best way to streamline all that fun stuff? And we found out that tech was really the biggest issue stopping people from being able to function at that time. So because my partner in business and pleasure, as we like to say, has a huge background in IT, he's a software architect, built out programs for the likes of IBM, Halliburton, and a bunch of others. So we decided to kind of morph into a tech company on the digital marketing side of things. So we had been doing that until earlier in 2023. And then with some health issues came up, I decided to shut down that part of the company and go back into straight consulting. So Brad consults on the tech side of things, and I consult on the marketing strategies and implementation and streamlining marketing so that it becomes more effective for people online.
Understood. So there's been a lot of things that happened around just pivoting, learning a lot of lessons there. So can you share with our audience, obviously you've been in business for a very, very long time. It's not an overnight success, and you had to have a lot of ups and downs, like you said, maybe even dealing with some health issues, right, to even align the business strategy to support with that. So what are some key lessons you learned in the process of building your company?
One is that people tend to overcomplicate things immensely. It is very much to the detriment. And oftentimes, if you just kind of slow down and back up the bus and go, okay, so what are we really trying to achieve here? Who are we really trying to connect with? And how do we get a hold of them as quickly, as effortlessly as possible so that they can meet us and give us money as easily and effortlessly for them as possible? And if people just make those, have a few meetings a year on that, they would find that there's a lot of business effort, energy, money going out in different directions. It just doesn't need to be there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So obviously there's a lot of people overcomplicates. I mean, we as entrepreneurs, we oftentimes things we have to have, 15 step down the road has to be all figured out. Everything has to be perfect. And if it's not the case, then, we overthink and overcomplicate and wait to execute, similar to kind of how we started having the conversation a little bit earlier. So tell our audience, how do you overcome that struggle? Because that's not something that you just overcome just because you've been in business for 5 years, because you have more challenges to solve for.
Exactly. Well, and most people in their businesses have kind of added things on. Well, maybe this will work, or maybe this will work, or maybe this will work. And Apple has a prime example of this when Steve Jobs just walked in and said, okay, we're not doing any of this. We're just doing, I think it was the iPod at the time. It's like, that's all we're doing. And they're like, what? We have like 47 projects on the go, and narrowed it down into the one thing that they wanted to be known for. And I think if businesses do that, especially if they've been around for 5-10 years, that's kind of the ideal time to be able to do it. But right now, as far as marketing is concerned, there's a huge opportunity here as well, because a lot of the things that were working, especially from 2015 to 2020, they just don't work anymore. They're too complicated. They're too maybe email dependent. There's a lot of issues going on right now that can stop us from being smooth and effective. So one of the things that we look at is using video podcasting as the tool to be able to hone in on a entrepreneur's specialty and be able to delegate the production and everything else post to somebody else so that they're not stuck doing it.
Mm-hmm. So clearly, just finding what really works and figuring out how to double down on that, as opposed to just trying to be, tinkering with too many different ideas, right?
Right.
I think when it comes to even marketing and sales, that's also a big misconception most people have, that you have to be doing a little bit of everything to be able to get the results that you're looking for, and never going all in on just one area or one sort of an initiative, and to see the success. And then all these entrepreneurs, let me go, crawl, walk, run. We're going to do a small little test on this, and if it works, we're going to keep doing that, right? And then that's usually kind of how they oftentimes do, and never actually invest the time and energy that's needed to get the success. So what other key lessons have you learned? Obviously, not having all your ducks in a row, but what other initiatives have you done to succeed as an entrepreneur?
Yeah. Well, you definitely want to have your ducks in a row if you have ducks, but you definitely don't want to put them all in one basket. So
That's true.
It's getting all of those fun things straightened out. And it's, if you look at, let's take video podcasting as the thing. The reason that we believe that it's so effective is because it does check all the boxes. So one, it positions you as the expert, which is primary importance. Right now, you need to be seen, at least your business needs to be seen as the go-to expert in a given industry, your industry. And when people are searching for something, that you come up. So it doesn't matter if they're searching windmills. It doesn't matter if they're searching birdhouses. It doesn't matter what they're searching for, as long as when they're doing that search, you come up. Now, how you do that is by putting out great content. So we've known this, but then people go, oh, okay, I'll build a course, I'll write a book, I'll do all these things, which means that they're going away from the public eye and sitting down at a computer and doing all this work. We're like, no, you want to do all this work in front of people, which has been kind of the bane of existence for, the Gen X and the baby boomers, is we don't want to go into social media and air our dirty laundry. We have had no idea how to put together things that were of interest, and people go, oh, as long as it's, good content. And then you watch things go viral that are like cats playing piano. And we're like, okay, how is that going to help me sell a wind turbine? Like it's not going to. So the video podcasting allows people to hone in on what their expertise is and make it enticing, because they're actually answering the questions that the people have that they're looking for. And because it's video content, they can then get somebody else to divvy it apart, and especially with AI right now, be able to get the audio out, to be able to get the text out and put it into words, blogs, searchable content for Google spiders, and the still shots. So by doing something once, you end up getting all of this content that you can then use, and somebody can pull out the interesting parts, the hooks, put that in front of people, so that people are, we all have the attention span of gnats, I included. I will watch the cat video any day over something businessy. But if that businessy post answers one of my questions, then boom, I am on it like a mouse or a cat on a mouse. And I want that information. And then I go back into the long form content and find out more about what I'm looking for. But I'm constantly scanning to look for the things that are important to me. And then I'll go into the long content, which is kind of the complete opposite of what was going on not even 10 years ago, where we'd put out a ton of long content and think that somebody was going to read it. And they did. We just don't have time anymore.
Yeah. And I think the proliferation of too much content, right? Because I would say that we were all living in a content deficit era, maybe 10, 15 years ago.
That too.
Like you said, somebody had to publish a book. Somebody had to have a lot of research, and everything goes into creating something that was massive. Today, everybody's walking around with a camera or whatnot, right? They're just putting out content, and it's just too much of it. And then you're like, where do I start?
Well, yeah. And we still have questions, which is the interesting part. So yes, we have too much information, and yet we don't have the answers that we're looking for. So if we can hone in on, when we're creating content, what are those questions that our audience has, and a little bit of communication with your sales team, if you have one, or people that are in the front line, if you're in hospitality, the people at the front desk, what kind of questions are people asking? How are we answering those questions? And being able to get that content on video and put it in front of people when they're looking for it can be paramount.
I mean, obviously, like you said in the beginning, right? People have a tendency to overcomplicate all of these things. Right? The things that you're describing is simple, right? When you explain it, is very simple, but they often think about the production value and the video equipment and the sound equipment and everything else that goes into it, and the cadence in which it has to get edited and published, and you can go on and on about it. So obviously, you are the queen of podcasts, and you are saying this because you've been doing 5 different podcasts, and you also help entrepreneurs produce podcasts, right? So one is enough, and now you have 5. So clearly you have a lot of time on your hand, or you figured out how to do this more efficiently. So how do you, without overcomplicating, go and do this?
Well, yeah. And then the first question is, how is 5 podcasts not more complicated than one? Okay, it is. We have a tendency, not only you, I have a tendency to overcomplicate things. And the reason I have 5 podcasts, one is because I love them. So there's a different kind of tone, and to your point, cadence to each one of them. They have a different audience and they have a different kind of outlook. So I'm the kind of person that I love to have, 8 different things on the go. I like to be busy, and I like them to have a variety of interest to me. So that's why I have the 5 podcasts, is because they're all of interest to me, which is very important when it comes to podcasting. I'll mention that. The other thing is, we do have a system, and we were doing it once a week, and we got that down into a system. And then we started doing them 3 times a week, got that down, started doing our main podcast, our flagship podcast, 5 times a week now. And it's just become, the little engine that could, and it's just chugging along. And we went, wow, this is awesome. This is what other people want. We want to be able to go out and have some fun, get the information out on video, whether it's a soapbox episode, an interview, or otherwise, and we could talk about those too, is that I get to go out and do what's fun. And then I get to give all of the tech issues and all of the other time-consuming issues to somebody else that actually loves to do that. And they become more efficient at it, and they have more fun with it. So it works.
So when you talk about like the podcast, the different audience, the different sort of a strategy, explain the thought process behind that, right? Because I think oftentimes we think of podcasts being like extremely polished and produced well, that if an engineering audience is going to listen to it and they're going to find value in it, and every second of it should matter. So how do you go about, especially when you talked about the different types and being able to talk to the different audience?
Those are great questions. And what we want to do is kind of back up the bus one step further and figure out what is the ideal strategy for your company. So depending on what you, the listener to this, what your company is, depends on how you want to approach it. So some people, they are an authority in their industry. They have a ton of information that they want to be able to get out, and they just can't get it out fast enough. Then for you, soapbox episodes are the way to go, because you get to go on there, and basically what it is you, yourself, and you're talking to the camera. You might have somebody asking you questions to be able to prompt you to carry you on for it. But for the most part, you're giving a soliloquy of information, answering a question that's pertinent to your industry. And then that video clip can go out. If you're not the expert in your industry and you're wanting to kind of be seen as the expert, that you know a ton of different information and it's all kind of surrounding your wheelhouse, then maybe interviews are the way to go. And you're bringing people in that are, they have the letters behind their name, or they have the time or the experience or whatever. And you're interviewing those people. By having those conversations, you get to basically absorb that expertise and that notoriety and be able to use that to be able to garner an audience. And there are other different types, but for the most part in business, those are the 2 big ones. The rest are used for fun. That you want to be able to kind of identify, why are you doing this in the first place? And then how do you get out to your audience? What is your audience looking for from you? How do they position you as the expert in their eyes? So going back to your example, if your audience is all engineers, then you're going to want to have great content. Now, keep in mind, there is a difference between civvies, mechies, and chemies, as we used to call. I'm sure there's like 8 more of them now. But even back in the day, you could tell that there were different personality styles, right? Electrical engineers just had a personality unto their own, especially compared to mechanical engineers. And so if those are your audiences, I would guess that electrical engineers are going to be more fact-based, more information. It's going to sound a lot like a manual that you're giving all the technical information. But that's okay, because they're looking for the answers to their questions, and you're going to give it to them. That's exactly what they're looking for. Whereas mechanical engineers, it might work better with dynamics, that if it is a host and a guest kind of an atmosphere, and it gives you a little bit of color commentary to the conversation that's being had. And what have you done with this? Well, we did this, and it was really exciting. This is what blew up, and this is how it went down. So you can still kind of bring those dynamics into it. There was one other thing I was going to say about that, because it's when you're positioning yourself as that expert. Oh, that was the other thing, is depending on who your guests are as well. So if your clients are typically the ones asking you a lot of questions about your business, you can invite them on, people that are potentially a guest or a prospect that you want to have on, interview them on the show and find out more about their business and how it works, give them an opportunity to have a platform and potentially become a client. Now, you don't want to sell them on the show. You want to actually interview them, but it becomes a great way to create a relationship with somebody and find out a ton of information about them through conversation.
So clearly you've done a lot of podcasts and you've helped a lot of entrepreneurs build and run their own podcasts. So I think everybody understands the value of getting knowledge from listening to a podcast, and everybody wants to start a podcast and realize how complicated, and sometimes, they give up, but no one really have successfully, that I know, have monetized the podcast into a business development system. So explain to our audience a little bit about what have you done, especially to perfect that side of the business, right? The post interview, how do you leverage that relationship to continue to grow and either become an actual customer or at least have as a referral source?
Yeah, absolutely. So with our system, the way we have it set up, our flagship podcast is a guest setup. So once somebody signs up to be a guest, they end up being in our database, and we have the ability to be able to segregate information and get them information that we think would be pertinent to them. So one of the things that I think is important to our strategy is making sure that our guests get introduced to other hosts and to potentially other guests on shows, anything that makes sense business-wise for them to be able to connect. That's one of my biggest objectives, is I want people to connect with people that can strengthen their Rolodex, so to speak. So we put them on the list for our podcast episodes. So every week they get notifications of that, and they get notifications of things that networking events and things that I'm hosting that I think they'd be interested in meeting people at those events. Now, to me, one of the easiest things to market is a party. It is, it has always been, as long as I've been in business for the last 25 years, been the easiest thing to market, because everybody loves a party. Even if it's engineers getting together and talking about engineering kind of things, they still love a party. And it becomes even more pertinent if you have other engineers that they can talk to at those parties about things that they're interested in, right? So if you're gathering like-minded individuals together, they're going to be interested in that. And if these people are all your potential clients, you want them at your party talking about you, the host of the party. And this can be a virtual party. It can be a live party. It can be all sorts of ways to be able to make that happen. But by having kind of those things scheduled throughout the year and then bringing people together, it gives you another opportunity to get in front of them, for them to have conversations about you, and to be able to reinforce concepts that you've taught or problems that they're having that you solve. And those are the conversations you want people to be having.
So you wanted that relationship and the conversations to continue even past
absolutely. Because it depends on what somebody buys, right? If they have a 5-year sales cycle, then if you catch them 6 months after they just bought something, then you can't ignore them for 4 years and hope to find them again by the 5th year. But what you can do is keep in touch with them throughout the 4.5 years with information that's pertinent to them.
So who in the organization, I mean, depending on the company size, it's going to vary, right?
Absolutely.
Who in the organization should be that phase of the podcast, especially it's a mid-sized company, right? And where you certainly want somebody who's going to be a little bit more has the longevity in their career to stay with that organization long. Yeah. So what would you recommend in terms of like picking the right person for that function of creating or being the host of that podcast?
My first objective is most often the CEO or the founder of the company, because they represent the company usually. But that's, again, we got to go back to the strategy and figure out, okay, why are we doing this in the first place? And why are we getting a hold of these people? CEOs often will be in a better position to to create networks with people, because they're going to be going for, ideally, an IPO. They're going to be going looking for funding. They're going to be looking for bigger contracts and fulfilling that vision. So the CEO has a vested interest in having the biggest Rolodex, if you want to put it that way, or the most weighty. So they have a vested interest in connecting with other people, but that might not fulfill the objectives of their strategy of why they're doing this. So it might be because they want to have potential clients. It might make sense to have their top salesperson in there, or their head of their sales division to be that person, so that they can streamline the conversation, so that they can filter people out and then sort them out through the sales team. It might even make most sense to have team of operations, the leader of operations, to be doing that, because they want to filter out the people that are coming in, and they want to see kind of the production and how it happens. So again, we got to back up the bus and look at the objective of why somebody would be doing that, in order to be able to monetize, make money off of it, and or position them the best in the industry. Most companies want to do it so that they make money off it. So that's where we'd go first.
Yeah. And obviously you talked about you're doing like 5 podcasts, and one of which you do 5 times a week. I think that's like 250 some episode in a year alone. I mean, that's just a high volume. I just can't even fathom. So like, obviously that's too much for someone to.
Oh yeah. Nobody else should be doing that.
So where do you get started? Like, what is the realistic number of episodes?
Once a week is fantastic. Once a week gives you more than enough to create consistency within the market, and it allows you to be able to get information out on a weekly basis. So whether you're doing soapbox episodes and you want to make sure that you're covering content every month, or you're doing interviews, 4 interviews a month, and again, depending on your sales cycle and who you're working with, that number might change, and it might make more sense to do it a little different. But how we do it is we look at building out your entire year in advance. So if you're doing it for soapbox episodes, what are the conversations that you want to have? What questions you want to answer? What's the content that you want to put out? And we'll just block it all out, and we'll put questions into, their calendar descriptions, so that every week that time block hits, they know exactly what they're going to record, what the video is about, and they can just hit record, and off they go to the races. If somebody's in a guesting mode, that gives us a chance to be able to get a hold of the right people, especially if the right people aren't vastly available. So if you're interviewing founders of companies, of under less than $1 million, you have a plethora of people. I mean, that's when you could easily fill up the 250 shows a year. But if you're in, say, the $1 million to $5 million, or $5 million to $20 million, and these people are going to be a little more difficult to source out, and those aren't going to be your only qualifications, right? You're going to want them in a certain industry, maybe, or in a certain location. So the harder your people are to find, the more you want to be able to space it out, just so that you have time to be able to create that cadence. We also start all of our people out with 12 shows in the bucket as fast as possible, so that we can have kind of a 4-week lag of when somebody records to when we put the episode out, just so that we have that kind of buffer of whether or not we might find the right guests and things like that.
Yeah, because I know that the tendency is, if you don't have the consistency, you kind of fall off the schedule, and then before you know it, the show is just kind of gone nowhere.
Exactly. It's just like watching Netflix. If your next episode isn't up when you're ready for it, it's like, bam, off to another one, and we'll go watch that until the series is over. So yes, you want to be there for them.
We're all being brainwashed by Netflix and all these things, by binge watching and everything else. So, I mean, we can sit here and talk for hours about podcasts and how to best leverage it, but obviously clearly something that you're doing well, right? Which is that you're able to manage 2-minute things, and you're able to do it very efficiently. So there's something that you are doing right from a productivity standpoint. So can you share with our audience a little bit about what are some hacks you have as an entrepreneur in able to manage all these different things and doing very high value things that only you can do?
Well, one is strategy before tactics. I am a huge advocate of that, because nothing, in my opinion, is a bigger waster of time in businesses is tactics before strategy. So that is number one. 2 is the systems that you put into place. How can you make it as easy and effortless for the next person in line to get the information they need in order to be able to do their job to the best of their abilities? And oftentimes right now, people are getting interested in software that's interesting, but not important. So it's like, yes, that's the new bell and that's the new whistle. And I get it, but does it do the thing we want it to do? And I'm kind of a fan of, if my 88 Honda Civic will do the job, then let's use that until the engine dies and kill it. We don't need a Lamborghini. Although if you're cruising down, the Autobahn, then you want a Lamborghini. That would be much more effective and efficient than an 88 Honda on that road, I assure you. So it's making sure that you have the right vehicles for the right roads. And that comes down to what software you're using. Does your CRM do what you want it to do? Does it have the capacity to be able to segregate your data when you want it to? Does it have the capacity to be able to automate the sign up system if you're taking in guests, to be able to allot them into the calendar, get notifications to the right people? None of this should be done manually. All of this should be done through software and through a single set of software, so that you have clean data going everywhere, and that your team knows kind of what the process is. And if anybody else goes on holidays or misses a beat, they know what information is where, and usually all concisely in one folder, one space, and everybody has access to it. So it sounds obvious, but there's a lot of companies that don't operate on those systems. They're trying to keep things, this person does it this way and that person does it that way, and it makes it easier for them. And I'm not an advocate of that. The whole company does it this way, and we all know what's going down when.
So apart from those sort of systems that you've implemented for managing the podcast and everything else, are there any sort of personal habits that you have in keeping you in having the sanity and kind of keep going and doing the productive work?
Yeah, well, I'm a special kind of crazy, but we've mentioned that. For most people, I would recommend that they set a schedule for themselves so that they're either recording or doing their task around the podcast at the same time every week, so that they know, say hypothetically, Monday at 3, that's when I do my recordings. And then that way, it's coming, you have everything in place, and it just becomes habitual after a while. At first it's going to be awkward, but after you do it 6 times, it's going to be like, au naturel. And the more you can keep your schedule that way, the better. And I put all of my details, everything I need to know about that show, in the show notes, so that when I open up that calendar event, everything's right there. And I go, oh yeah, right. Okay. It's like I debrief myself every meeting, and I know what has to happen at that time. And it's just like, oh yeah, okay, we're off.
Sounds good. So obviously you have a lot of systems and processes, and clearly have worked for you. So a lot of lessons you learned over the years, and I'm sure you can give a ton more advice to entrepreneurs. So knowing what you know today, what advice would you give your younger self?
Oh, that's a great question. Advice I would give my younger self is, one, is to play in my imagination. Go have fun with it. Imagine if you could do anything you ever wanted to do. If you could make your life as easy and as most fun as you could possibly do it, what would that look like? And don't be afraid to reverse engineer it and just go make it happen, because it all starts there. Is whatever you want to have happen, you can have happen. It's only a matter of time, and you just got to reverse engineer it and then set out the path to go and make that happen.
Most certainly. I'm sure you have no regrets in life, but if you had to do it all over again, what would you do differently?
If I had to do it all over again, what would I do differently? I would have got hotel.com and benbreakfast.com. We started a bed and breakfast in Nunavut in the Northwest Territories in the early 90s. And they're all looking at me going, oh yeah, you can use this internet thing. I'm like, I don't even know what that is. But yeah, it would have been a ton of fun. Yeah, awesome. That and Apple stocks.
That's true. We're all Amazon and Apple.
Exactly.
Yeah. Michelle, I certainly enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with my audience.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Awesome.
This episode of Coffee with Closers is brought to you by One IMS, a leading digital marketing agency helping businesses win new customers. To request a free marketing ROI audit, please visit oneims.com. If you enjoyed this video, please share it. To make sure you never miss an episode, please subscribe.